We'll now talk about what we call the else-if statement. Let's take a look at a different example. Let's say we want to write an application that's going to compute the letter grade. So our input, which we're going to note as S, is the score of some exam. And our output in this case is going to be what we call grade, and it's going to be the letter grade of that score. So we either get an A, B, C, D, or F. So there are several cases we have to consider to determine what our letter grade is. So if our score S is greater than or equal to 90, then that means the grade is going to be A. Now, if that's true, we get an A. If it's not true, then it could be something else. So let's take a look at another case. Well, if S is between 80 and 90, so specifically we're saying that it has to be greater than or equal to 80, or it's less than 90, strictly less than 90, then our grade is going to be a B. Now, if this is not true, then, well, could it be a C? So we have to check to see if S is greater than or equal to 70, or we can, as we see here, it would be 70 less than or equal to S. Either one's fine. And then we'd also have to see if S is strictly less than 80. If that's true, then our grade is going to be a C. And then if that's not true, then let's check for a D. So if S is greater than or equal to 60, or 60 is less than or equal to S, and S is less than 70, then our grade is going to be a D. And then the final case is, well, if none of that's true, then that means S should be less than 60, which means the grade would be an F. We have another flowchart to help illustrate this problem, how to put together this application. So we start up here where we're going to have the user enter S, the score, and we're first going to check, is S greater than or equal to 90? If so, we're going to move down here and we're going to set our grade to A and then print the fact that the grade is A. Now, if this is not true, well, we're going to go this way and we're going to check to see if S is greater than or equal to 80 and less than 90. If that's true, then we're going to move down here and we're going to set grade to B and then print the grade as B. Now, if that's not true, then we're going to move to the next question. So notice that we're asking ourselves a lot of questions here, and that's fine. So if it's not true, then we would check to see if S is greater than or equal to 70 and less than 80. If that's true, then we're going to move down here. We're going to set our grade to C, and then we're going to print C. Now, if this is not true, then we need to move over again, and we need to check to see if S is greater than or equal to 60. If that's true, then we will move down here, set our grade to D, and then print the grade. Now, if this is not true, we don't need to ask ourselves if S is less than 60. If S is not greater than or equal to 60, then we know it's less than 60. So we will just move towards this direction, set our grade to F, and then print F. So how do we do this in our code? Well, the idea with this is we can actually add an if statement or an if-then statement inside the else portion of an if-then-else statement. So what we would do is combine the else and the if onto the same line. So we would see a line that says else if. So unofficially, this is an else if statement, but that's what we're going to go with. So let me give you the format for how this would work. So we have something like this. So we still have an if-then-else statement. So we have if some condition. Now notice here I say condition 1 because we can have multiple conditions. We have a then, and then a set of statements. And this set of statements, so this set right here, would happen if condition 1 is true. Now if it's not true, then we're going to go to the next line, this else if. So the else means that our condition 1 was false, and then we can check to see if condition 2 is true. So we have else if condition 2, then, which means if condition 2 is true, then we would execute this set of statements here. And if that's not true, we would go to the else portion right next to it, and then we would execute the lines right underneath it. So we would execute these statements right here if condition 2 was false, and then we would end this particular if-then-else statement. Now, we should mention that we may have additional else-ifs or additional else-if statements before the else. Here we just have an example of two conditions, but we can expand this to however many conditions we want. Here is our code to handle this grade application example. So the first line, we have a variable called score. And yeah, we could use S, but score is a better name. And it's a double. And we see here that we would have some text, tbscore.text. So tbscore probably means a text box that's going to store the score. We convert that string to a double, and we store that in score. The next line, we have a string, and we call it MSG, which is short for message. And initially, it's going to be your grade is. So what comes afterwards is we're going to concatenate either an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. And the way we check is by using an if, then else statement. And we're going to use a bunch of else ifs in here. So we first check to see if our score is greater than or equal to 90. If so, then we would execute this line right here, where we would concatenate an A to the end of our message, store that back in our message, and then we would go all the way down to the end and store that message in our display text. So we have lb display.text. So that's going to be some label that would display our result. Now, if this condition is not true, then we're going to go to the next condition. We're going to go to the else if and check to see if the score is greater than or equal to 80. Now you might be asking, shouldn't we also be checking if the score is less than 90? Well, that's not necessary here, because if score is not greater than or equal to 90, then it has to be less than 90. There's no other option. So we don't have to check that. We only have to check to see if score is greater than or equal to 80. If that is true, then we're going to execute this line right here, where we would concatenate a B to the end of the message. So notice that we would skip the previous concatenation, so there's no A at the end of this message at this line. So this would say your grade is B, and then we would move down to the end and store that in our label text. Now, if this is not true, we would go to the next condition. So we would do else if and check to see if score is greater than or equal to 70. If that is true, then we're going to execute this line right here, where we would concatenate a C to the end of your grade is. So that means it would say your grade is C. Then we move down to the end and store that in our text for our label. Now, if that is not true, we're going to go to the next condition and check to see if the score is greater than or equal to 60. If that's true, then we're going to execute this line right here. If I could draw an arrow, there we go. And we would concatenate a D to the end of our message. So we would go down to the end. Our label text would say your grade is D. And if that's not true, I could do else if score less than 60, but that's not necessary. We can just execute this line here, where we would concatenate an F to the end of the message. So we would go to the end, and our display text would be your grade is F.